Welcome to the latest edition of Arts Alive Music. The Liverpool Phil has been celebrating its 175th birthday, but as their chief conductor Vasily Petrenko says, their focus is very much on the future. Their new season begins this month with an impressively varied programme of classics, music you haven't often heard, and some you've never heard before. At the season launch, we were entertained by the Quartet of St Luke's, and I then had a chance to talk to Maestro Petrenko and to Sandra Parr, the artistic planning director. Vasily, fantastic new season announced today, continuing the tradition of Russian music.
Of course we do continue tradition of Russian music because there are so many great Russian pieces in the heritage of classical music. So we will finish Tchaikovsky's cycle completion with the Third Symphony played in the autumn. We will continue our exploration of Shostakovich music. We will do some pieces by Prokofiev, by Khachaturian, and there's a lot of Russian music, but there's many more. There's Mahler, there's Mendelssohn, Elijah, which I'm doing for the first time. There's Alpine Symphony by Richard Strauss, there's Sibelius, there's Dvorak, there's Brahms, there's Nielsen, there's everything in this season. So I think it's one of the most versatile seasons in my time here, at least. It's 175th anniversary. It's also my 10th season, so I was trying to fulfill the gaps in my dreams to play the pieces which I wanted to play for a long time, like Das Klagenlied, for instance. But at the same time, to keep the same idea of bringing new repertoire, of bringing well-known pieces, of bringing side pieces, to give a very broad menu for the audience. And I'm very much looking forward for all those 25 concerts.
You were talking a little bit earlier about Khachaturian, and of course we know him for his sabre dance, but almost nothing else. I mean, are we going to learn a lot more about him?
He was a great composer from Armenia. Apparently, when he started already to compose, he didn't even knew how to write the music down. So in Soviet years, he had an assistant who was writing his melodies, which he was basically singing and playing on the piano, writing by the notes and then orchestrating it. But his talent, his ability to produce magnificent melodies and very spicy orchestrations was, I think, unprecedented and unraveled in the old Soviet history of compositions. So he was author of few ballets, he had beautiful piano concertos, he had written fantastic violin concerto, trumpet concerto, he also written operas, vocal cycles, a lot of music. And I hope that after the next season people would know him not just by sabre dance here.
And Sandra, when you're programming a season like this, you're obviously interested in bringing in new music, although it's often quite challenging for audiences, I think. But you've got, 7 new premieres this year?
Well, we believe in challenging the audience, but also the orchestra find it very interesting to play new music. I think it's very important for our history that we constantly develop the new repertoire for the orchestra, but also for music generally. Next year we do have several commissions, mainly because it's our 175th birthday, so we have to celebrate it somehow. We have to put a bit of music history there. So we have a new commission from Qi Gengchen, Chinese composer, and a new piece by Christian Lindberg. And for some, perhaps the most exciting will be the Einaudi piano concerto that we're going to be giving the world premiere of.
Tell us a bit about the Christian Lindbergh. Is it his own piece, is it?
It's his own piece, and he's written it. It's a concerto for wind and brass. Great cheer from the strings when we announced this. He has worked here 3 or 4 times now and developed quite a close relationship with the orchestra. And so, as well as being a fantastic conductor, he's also well known as a composer. And this came out of a conversation over a drink, and he said, I'd love to write for wind and brass, so that's what he's doing.
And Vasily, you were talking earlier also about the relationship between Sibelius and Brahms. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Well, Brahms, at the time scale, of course, was succeeded by Sibelius. Early Sibelius in particular was close in his language to Brahms, of course adding the Nordic temperament and Nordic colorit to it, plus adding some Russian orchestrating school. It's irony because he studied a lot with Rimsky-Korsakov and with Russian orchestration, then was fighting for Finnish independence for many, many years. And then Sibelius went into his own language, which somehow went rather far from Brahms. It went through Strauss' Mahlerian influence and even towards something very, very special, because the late pieces by Sibelius, when you hear them, you can immediately identify that that's Sibelius and only Sibelius. But doing those pieces, Brahms 1 and then Sibelius 2 in consecutive concerts, for me that will be very interesting to explore how the first symphony, written years before Sibelius 2, was influencing the Sibelius Second Symphony. And relations between composers is always interesting. You know, this week we're doing Dvorak 7. There's also a lot of Brahms influence, even some musicologists saying it's almost like Brahms' Fifth Symphony. But there's also Mahler, which went after Dvorak. There's a lot of Wagner. They're even almost like Tristan chords and Tristan quotations. And they're at the same time this distinctive Czech folk music. So for me, it's a combination to explore how it works, especially knowing the history of the symphony, because it was also about Czech identity as a nation, about fighting for independence from Austrian Empire, and also after loss of mother for Dvorak. There's always very interesting angles how you can look into this or that piece, and I'm very happy we're doing it here, and then we will do it in Prague very soon.
Sandra, the Phil has always really been quite an international orchestra, but you've been doing touring to China now, and you've got some Chinese artists coming to play this year, I believe.
We have. We've been to China in 2010 and most recently in September while the hall was being refurbished, as you can see behind. And during that time we met a lot of Chinese musicians and we came across some Chinese repertoire. So next year we will be having, during the course of the season, 3 pianists actually, Nu and Ji Liu, who's selling an incredible amount of records at the moment. They will be coming to us. And when we were in China in September, we had a fabulous violinist called Ding Feng, who hasn't actually played here in Liverpool yet. And the musicians more or less demanded that he come to Liverpool, so he's coming as our soloist next January, which we're looking forward to very much.
There's been an enormous growth, hasn't there, in musicians from the Far East playing classical Western music. I mean, we couldn't do the same in reverse, could we? I mean, is there some reason for that? How do you explain that?
Thousands of years of history of China. I think the explanation is that not so many people actually in the Western world are interested in the Chinese music and Indian music, which is entirely different, because we are very happy with what we have. And it's totally opposite there. The Chinese people are now extremely interested in Western music. It was for many years already in Japan. So Japan was a territory for classical music for quite many years. Korea, South Korea, was also a territory. China is like the new territory, and for them, looking for something new, looking for a part of Western life, if you would like to say so. And also the government saying that playing musical instrument is very good for your child. And in China they take it very seriously. So that's why there's about 2 million of professional pianists at the moment, and there's millions of children who play violin at the moment, who study violin, millions. And this is becoming very, very serious. So that's why, of course, this vast amount of people who taking classical music so seriously from the very early age, at the end produce a virtuosos, and we will see more and more of them, I think, in the future.
Thank you very much indeed. That was great. Thank you very much for talking to us.
It's a big pleasure, and please come here and enjoy our concerts.
Yes,
I
thank you very
certainly do.
much. Thank you.
The season opens, as it means to go on, with a world premiere of an overture by Nigel Hess, alongside music by Vaughan Williams, Rachmaninoff and Tchaikovsky on September the 24th. Join us in part 2 when we meet the percussionist and film composer Michael Cunningham.
I'm Michael Cunningham, I'm 18 and I'm a percussionist from Liverpool. I've been drumming for about 5 or 6 years now. I started off in secondary school with my peripatetic drum teacher, Paul Wilshire, who came in and started teaching me the basics of rock and pop. He then recommended me to go to Separate Music Service, where I started studying with James Martin, who's an ex-US military drum corps teacher. Taught me tune percussion, snare drum kit, all the rest of it. And then past 2 years at Cheltenham School of Music with Paul Patrick, who's my main teacher. He's principal percussionist at the BBC Philharmonic Orchestra, and David Hext, who's principal percussionist for the Highline Orchestra in Manchester. And they've just taken me to a completely new level. Genres I'm familiar with playing, well, I can do the obvious like rock and pop, that's just straight 4/4 stuff. But the more in-depth genres like Latin, soul, funk, hip-hop, that kind of thing, I'm very familiar with all of that as well. Because I've had tuition from Sophie Hastings, who's with percussion group Formality, and she's very broadly spread. Rudiments play a key part in most of the genres that I play, and also soloing in those genres as well. Latin and funk are definitely much more complex than your standard rock and pop. because it's not just kind of 4 to the floor with the bass drum. You've got like variations on the hi-hat and snare drum, fills around the toms as well, and that could be incorporated into just the regular groove. Each limb basically will be doing something completely different. So you can have a bell pattern on the ride cymbal and then something completely different on the snare drum, and then you'd be free to improvise around that. I've got a few drumming idols. There's David Garibaldi, who's a drummer with Tower of Power. He's just unbelievably funky and just, great. Lee Pearson, who's drummer with Spyro Gyra, again, just unbelievably funky, and he can get a really crisp sound out of everything he plays. It's just very precise and not too overpowering when other people have got solos and stuff. It's just how to complement the band. Sight reading or learning from listening. I've kind of done a bit of both. Started off with learning from notes and stuff just because it's really useful. Like as a composer, it means that I can notate what I've got in my head. But also like listening to stuff and then trying to emulate what they've been doing. It just really helps train your ear, get the most out of the musicality. Tips or advice for aspiring drummers? I'd say just get involved with everything and anything you can, really. Just try and dive into as many different genres as possible. If you start off on drum kit, then the transition from that to snare drum to tune percussion is really easy, I found anyway. Rudiments, I think, is a key thing that all drummers should know, because no matter whether you're playing snare drum or drum kit, the rudiments are just essential, because if you're doing like a fill around the toms, you might need a different sticking pattern, which could also be a paradiddle, and then if you've got the muscle memory there, it's just going to be really easy to translate that from snare drum to the drum kit and make your playing a lot better. I'll just probably start off with the basics of just how to hold the drumstick. You want about 1 inch at the bottom, and then you pinch it with your thumb and first finger, and then wrap your other fingers around so it's got plenty of room for movement. And you're just using your other fingers to power it onto the drum head, and then just let it bounce back. Same with the left hand, and then doing the fast stuff like that, you're just controlling the bounce, because naturally the stick will bounce when you do that, so you're just pressing it in with your first finger and the others. One of the other tricks that I use is backsticking, so you use the butt of the stick and the drum head. So say if you're doing like a paradiddle exercise, right, left, right, left, left. You'd start the paradiddle with the backstick. So it takes a bit of getting used to doing that, and then you're balancing it between your thumb and first finger again. That bit's crucial, that's the fulcrum. And then there's the traditional grip, which is not as widely used these days. It's mainly used for jazz brushes, so if you're doing sweeping motions and stuff, it's just a lot easier. Backsticking with the traditional grip is actually a lot more natural, because you're just going straight back to your match grip, but with the wrong end of the stick, so you could be doing some kind of triplet thing. Royal Liverpool Orchestra is percussionist. I used to be kind of principal percussionist there, but because I haven't been there for about 2 years now, then they've just brought in other people. I started off there on drum kit, just doing orchestral things. There's quite a lot of parts for wind band arrangements that are actually written for drum kit, because you've got a bass drum, snare drum and cymbals, which is what would usually be played by individual people. So someone on clash cymbals, someone on snare drum, someone on bass drum, but that can all be translated and compacted down to one instrument. I've been creating film score compositions actually quite recently. I started doing it like in the final year of Chet's. I just started listening to loads of film music, so soundtracks for Pirates of the Caribbean, like all the Hans Zimmer stuff, Harry Gregson Williams, James Horner as well, so like the Avatar soundtrack. Just taking like hints and tips from what they've been saying in videos and stuff, and then putting that to music. I've started off mainly with trailers because that's quite a short thing to do, because taking on a film score is like a huge undertaking. I listen to a lot of Two Steps from Hell, which is a music production company which does all of the music for the trailers for big blockbuster films, so that kind of epic music style. I'm currently writing music for the Batman vs Superman trailer because it was just the first thing that I saw on YouTube. Just thought, might as well have a go at that. The main thing I took inspiration for writing music to that was probably Hans Zimmer. So like just huge bass drums and taiko drums, like providing the like accents in all the right places and stuff. In September I'm off to Leeds College of Music to further study percussion and composition. One thing that I really want to do in like later life, or hopefully while I'm there, will be take an orchestra on tour, because I've started exploring the genre of dubcastral, which is a fusion of dubstep and orchestral music. So I really want to get young people interested in classical music and try and figure out a way of creating sounds that you hear in most dubstep tracks, but using a symphony orchestra. There's so many different effects and other unusual sounds you can coax out of an orchestra, and I'd really like to explore that and hopefully bring them out of the concert hall to the general public and then get people like interested in it in that sense.